Hey, this is Chris with Hacking Your Leadership. On today's discussion on employee engagement, I want to talk about something that I see a lot of leaders do that can tend to disengage employees because over time they end up seeing a lack of consistency. And what I'm talking about is this tendency for some leaders to essentially pick their battles. And it's frustrating to see sometimes because I think a lot of leaders have the best intentions. And I've seen leaders. I've had leaders say to me in conversation, "Oh no, don't go to that employee and talk to them about that thing. I just talked to them about something else yesterday, and I don't want them to feel like we're coming down on them hard every single day." And my thought is, well, did they do something every single day? Like, if they did something every single day, that feels like we should be talking to them. This idea that you think that means coming down on them, that's the problem. And because if you're coming down on the employee, then that would be a problem to do every single day. That would be demoralizing and disengaging. But I don't think it's one or the other. I don't think it's you have to choose between making sure that the employees are doing what they're supposed to do, or making sure that you keep them engaged by not coming down on them. You shouldn't have to choose.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think you're spot on around how you build a high performing team and a culture, and how do you not make it seem like because you had a conversation or had to maybe critique someone or provide coaching or feedback or whatever you might want to call it, but like that is something that you can only handle so often, or that you have to be conscious of. Like, are there those moments? Absolutely. If you've had to really have a conversation about something that might be a little bit tougher than usual, or something that's going on, there is absolutely a time to create space and to allow someone to absorb that, to take that all in. But when it comes to most of the daily tasks of the job, which is kind of, I think, what you're talking about in this context around, like, these are the things that we should be doing every day. These are the things that are, expectations of the role, whatever they might be. Then conversation and dialogue and feedback and coaching and all these types of things should be happening consistently. And then as they do happen that way, you don't run into some of those elements that can be filled with, sometimes maybe emotion or a different perspective on something. But like, I think you have to really find yourself in a space as a leader to make sure that the things that are happening around helping a team get better, or around setting the rule set or setting the framework of what's expected, has to be to some degree very rigid, so that it's easy to understand. If I don't do this, then this will happen. If I do this incorrectly, then this is how it will be corrected, or how we will talk about it. And then that removes, I think, a lot of that maybe anticipation of the conversation, or some of the emotion that comes with the conversation. So I think it's important that, that as a leader, you're consistent and you're timely with establishing these types of things, so that the team and your people know what to expect.
Right. I'm gonna pull a shameless plug for the vision clarity support framework here, because I think if I think about the times when I've gotten constructive feedback from a leader on something that I did poorly, whether or not I took it wrong, whether or not it disengaged me or made me feel demoralized, or made me feel like I was failing, or made me feel whether I left the interaction with negative feelings or positive feelings, depended fully on what happened prior to that conversation. Meaning, if I know the rules, as you put it, if I know the rules of the game in advance, if I have that clarity, and if I have the support, meaning if the first time I do something that is in violation of those rules, if the conversation starts with the leader saying to me, "Hey, I noticed this. Hey, what can I do to support you? What can I do to help you?" The assumption that the reason I didn't do it correctly was not because I was cutting corners or lazy or unethical or whatever, but that I just made a mistake, or that I didn't know how to do the thing. If that's the first way that you approach the employee, they're not going to take that incorrectly. They're going to take it as having support. And then if that happens too many times, then that's when the conversation moves into the something other than just how can I support you, but that these are the expectations. But if the conversation has been had multiple times and then it gets to one about these are essentially the rules, this is the expectation, then that's your job as a leader to do that. And if you've done the right things in advance, if you can look at yourself in the mirror and say, have I talked to this person about this thing before in a way that makes sure that they know that I want them to succeed, that I support them, and I want to see them get better at this thing? Yes, okay. Have I made sure that we were clear on where the resources are that they have access to be able to get better at this? Yes. Have I offered my own personal support in terms of teaching them how to do it, even one-on-one, asking them to demonstrate to me what they can do to show me what their abilities are or lack thereof, to figure out where the needle needs to be moved? Have we done all these things? If the answer is yes to all of that and it's still not happening, that's not coming down on the employee. That's your job as a leader to ensure that the people you have are cast correctly in the right roles. And some of them aren't going to be. And that's life. That's fine. Like, some of them aren't going to be. And if you can find a role where they could be cast correctly in because it appeals to what their skill set is, what they love doing, and the availability of it in your organization or in your team, then great, you should do that. You should try to support your people wherever you can. And if there isn't any, then sometimes people are not right for a job, and it's your responsibility to make sure that you can have those conversations with while they lead the conversations with dignity and grace and feeling like this wasn't something that they feel like they've personally wronged you on. It's just something that maybe wasn't the right fit for them. And so if you're a leader of people, I want to go through a couple of things that you can do to get better at this so that you're not feeling like you're picking and choosing what conversations to have with your employees, because I think they're all important. We'll talk about that in a minute, but first let's give it up to one of our sponsors. All right, if you're a leader of people, there are certain things that you should be doing to set you up for success when it comes to these tactics. The first is absolutely perfect note keeping and records on the conversations that you're having with your people. You need to know the ones that you've already had and the ones that you haven't. You can't be thinking to yourself, I feel like I just talked to that person about that, but was that last week or was that last month? You don't have to know off the top of your head, but if you don't know off the top of your head, there needs to be somewhere where you can look back and think, this was when we had the conversation. Because after you had the conversation, you debriefed it electronically somewhere, and you're putting those notes in so that you know that you can look back and say, okay, this is what we talked about. This was the date we talked about it. And if you're on an organization or on a team where there are multiple leaders or multiple people essentially responsible for kind of overseeing an entire team, it's very, very important that you communicate what those conversations that you're having with people are with the other people that are responsible for leading that team too. Because one, if I did something wrong and two different people who are both considered leaders see me do that, and they both try to talk to me about it an hour apart from each other because they didn't see that, that's a problem. You don't want that to happen. So you want to make sure that a person is talked to about things they need to be improving, but not by multiple people on the exact same thing. Clear communication on those notes and on those records and on the times and the dates and the bullet points of what was discussed with an employee about improving something, that needs to be shared with the rest of your peers or co-leaders, so that no one thinks that I won't talk to that employee about that. Someone else probably talked to them about that already. Well, maybe they did, maybe they didn't. If you don't have a way of sharing those notes or that communication, you'll never know. So have both of those in place, and you're a lot less likely to get into a situation where a person is being talked to multiple times for the exact same thing when they don't deserve it. You'll also be less inclined to find yourself in a situation where a person is, getting away with doing things they shouldn't do because you think, oh, they've already been talked to, so I won't do that.
Yeah, this I think is something that's very kind of industry specific in a lot of ways, because as you were kind of walking through it, I think about so many of the leaders that listen to the show, they don't share the responsibility necessarily of their team or the individuals that they lead. So it's kind of like just them, right?
Sure.
But I want to underline the point though of what you said. Like, it's still important that you are continuing. If it's just you and you're leading a team or individuals, like, to continue to document and to have those notes that you can reference, because based upon the team size that you have, and in many industries, like kind of layers of leadership where you may be engaging with direct reports, and you may be engaging with other teams that maybe connect with your direct reports, but they don't have a reporting structure. Like, all of these things come into play when it comes down to how are you making sure that that an individual, whether it's just you as their direct leader, or that they may have multiple dotted line leaders in different ways, that individual feels that they are getting what they need to be successful, that it is intentional, that is kind of built upon, to your point, like this continual conversation and dialogue and kind of timeliness, and that as that's happening, it's reflective of maybe the urgency in whatever it is that they may be doing from a behavioral standpoint, or from an approach standpoint. So, as an example, you may have you may have to have two conversations with the same person in the same day if the two different things they did were both things that needed to be addressed right away. And then there's the case of like, well, maybe there is that, hey, I had this conversation with this individual. I need to give them some time to be able to like take that in, to be able to apply what they're learning, to show me, how they're taking that, and it's helping them to be more effective or more efficient in their role. And based upon your industry or the job, that might be, I can watch that happen in 5 minutes, or it might be something I have to follow up in 5 days, but just being very intentional and planning the time and the way in which you're going to approach this work, I think is critical.
Right. Keep in mind that this isn't just the right thing to do from a leadership standpoint, or from trying to fulfill your job as a leader. It's the right thing to do for the employee, because if an employee ends up in a situation where they feel like, or they're getting the impression that, oh, I did something, I wonder if I'm going to be talked to about this. I wonder. If they're wondering, that's a problem. They need to know that they will be. They need to know what the rules are, be very clear on what they are, and so that they know in advance whether they're going to be. Because I'll tell you what doesn't feel good as an employee is wondering. What doesn't feel good as an employee is being unclear on whether or not, hey, did I really do something wrong, or did I not? If I did, is somebody going to talk to me about this or not? Did they even notice? Did they not? And carrying around that with me for 3 or 4 days, wondering whether or not I'm going to be talked to. No, if you've done something, someone should talk to you in a way that is, kind of dispassionate. You don't bring emotion to it. The person didn't wrong you as a leader. They just broke a rule. And some rules are small, and if they get broken, they can be broken multiple times before anything really problematic happens. Other rules are bigger, and they can't be broken multiple times before something happens. But as long as you are very clear with your people long before the breaking of the rules happens on what they are and what the process is, if one were to be broken, then you can put your head on the pillow every night and say you've done your job as a leader, and you owe it to your people to hold them to those standards. You owe it to the people who aren't breaking the rules to hold people who are breaking the rules to a standard, because they will notice if that's not happening, and they will start breaking the rules if they feel like, oh, this doesn't really matter. Look at all these people breaking the rules. Why should I not break them? Thank you all for joining us on this discussion on employee engagement. We'll see you next Thursday for the next one. You have a great day.